During the late 1980s, early 1990s, during the depths of the AIDS, HIV years, the city was known for what became known as the San Francisco model of AIDS care, meeting people who needed help where they lived and when they needed it. An example of the new generation of San Francisco model for AIDS care is HIVE. Tonight we speak with its director, Shannon Weber. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Now, you've been the director of HIVE for 5 years now, but HIVE was known by a different name a number of years ago, correct?
Yeah, we started in 1989, known as the Bay Area Perinatal AIDS Center. And then as our work evolved, as there became fewer perinatal HIV transmissions, in fact, it's been 12 years since a baby was born with HIV in San Francisco.
Wow. Now, can we say that for other cities in the country, or frankly, can we say that for other countries in the world?
Well, in the United States, remarkable work has been done. There's between 8,000 and 9,000 women living with HIV who give birth each year. And for 2013, the last year that the CDC has numbers, there were 65 babies born with HIV. And that's down from nearly 2,000 in the height of the epidemic.
Right. You know, when I moved here in 1986, it seemed like you couldn't walk down the street without seeing a picture of someone dealing with AIDS, HIV. And the face of AIDS were basically gay men, white gay men living in the Castro, and we know that that is not the entire face of AIDS. It isn't even actually the majority of the face of AIDS as far as the world goes when you look at Africa and around the world. Do you ever feel, or did you feel, that sometimes mothers who were infected with HIV or babies born with AIDS were not getting the publicity or the attention they needed? Did it make your work harder?
You know, that's a good question. One, I think this is an example of how HIV, we bring all worlds together, and that's some of the hope and beauty, which we can talk about with Getting to Zero later. But I think where we've struggled is with our success. So it's not that the focus is only on gay men, it's that as the numbers of babies born with HIV has gone down, it's harder to maintain the attention to it, even though there's more women living with HIV that have babies each year. And so the work still needs to get done. The challenge is still there, but because you're not seeing the new infections, people or public health doesn't seem to think it's such a problem. But in fact, could we even be talking about getting to zero in cities if we hadn't already done this with
Well, let's talk about getting to zero. I mean, we're now in what, year 35 of the AIDS pandemic, and there still isn't a cure. There have been ups, there have been downs. There's still people contracting AIDS, but it is still, although in some cases treatable, eventually, usually a terminal illness. How do you continue to get attention and money for your work at HIVE when a lot of people have just decided, oh, AIDS is over?
Well, it's a story we have to keep telling, so thank you for having me here to tell it. So you have to keep talking about the impact that it makes in people's lives. So having women and men who are impacted or affected by HIV come forward and talk about how being able to have a family and being able to have choice is important to them. To me, that reproductive health piece is really one of the next phases of this HIV work. So for so long, people were told or believed that they couldn't have a child if they or their partner had HIV. But in fact, now with antiretroviral therapy and with pre-exposure prophylaxis and then also assisted reproductive technologies, if you are living with HIV or affected by HIV and you want to have a baby, you can do that.
How did you come to this work?
How did I come to this work? I've always been passionate about women's health and really about creating a world where women can have babies and sex when, where, and how they want to. And so this is really that intersection of reproductive health and gender and class and socioeconomic status and all these things coming together in one place.
I read that line on your bio, and I used it in the tease about how you're passionate about having women be able to have sex and babies when and where they want to. Is that your personal line, or is that the mission of HIVE?
Oh, that's my personal line. I feel that it's such a part of a just society, the way women can have choice over our bodies and choice over the pleasure that we have. And so for me, that really feels deep down into my bones, my life's work. And right now I'm able to do that through this HIV work.
So do you feel more or less optimistic about doing this work after last Tuesday's election?
I feel like more than ever this work is important. And that it's concerning that so many of the rights that we've gained and progress that's been made, even though there's still tremendous struggles in certain states, that could be on the line, both in terms of women's safety and violence against women and also women's access to reproductive health. Right.
Now, HIVE is not a political organization, so HIVE doesn't take a position in politics, correct?
Correct.
Having said that, how are you going to deal with the next 4 years of a Trump administration?
There's lots of organizing that needs to happen. And there's lots of storytelling that needs to happen. I think that I heard a line the other day that said, you know, you can't hear someone's story without and not love them. And so I think that as more and more people can come forward and tell stories about how they've been impacted by policies, laws, stigma, bias, and also the joy and happiness in their life that has come when they're able to embrace love and freedom and reproductive autonomy, that we will be able to move things.
Right. Now, when HIVE rebranded 5 years ago, I mean, that was at a time when people really were beginning to say, do we need the San Francisco model? Do we need all these organizations? I mean, do we still need a HIVE, or do you think HIVE will eventually become part of a larger umbrella?
You know, that's a good question. We are really strongly allied with many other organizations, including Getting to Zero and some of our general HIV clinic partners, but there will always be a need for this niche reproductive health work. And it's a short period of time that we work with folks. It's before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and after pregnancy, so it could be up to 12 months. Sometimes it's shorter, depending on when someone comes to care. But there really is this specialty model of care that needs to be provided for folks during that period.
So talk to me about that model, but also your clients. What is the time period in which you're dealing with the people you help, and how do they come to you? Do you find them? Do they find you?
A little bit of...
How much does it cost the women?
Yep, a little bit of both in terms of how people find us. So we are really well connected with clinics throughout the region. We see women, not just from San Francisco, but all around the region, who get referred to us who are living with HIV and who are pregnant. In terms of how long, ideally we talk to someone before they get pregnant and help them with preconception care, make sure that they're healthy and their partner's healthy. But the reality is at least 50% of pregnancies are unplanned in the general population, and it's higher among people affected by HIV. So the reality is a lot of folks come to us after they're already pregnant. And so
then what do you do? How can you help them then?
The San Francisco model engage people when they come and where they are. So helping the way we reduce HIV transmission to an infant or a partner is by the person who's living with HIV having an undetectable viral load. So the healthier a mom is, the less likely she is to pass it on to her baby. And if in this scenario where it's a man and a woman who are together and the man has HIV, the healthier he is, the less likely he is to pass it on to his partner. So there really is this focus on wellness and overall health that's embedded in this preconception care or pregnancy care model.
Talk to me about some of the stories, obviously without revealing confidential information, names or whatnot, but some stories that have really touched you, where you really felt HIVE made a difference in this couple's life, or this man's life, this woman's life, or really to the point, to this baby's life.
Yeah, there's a remarkable woman, her name's Poppy. That's a pseudonym that she goes by online. She started a blog and she's told her stories. She's talked on TV. I probably met her 8 or 9 years ago when she first called and said, hey, my partner's living with HIV and I want to have a baby and no one will help me. Could we do sperm washing and assisted reproductive technology? And at the time, that it was illegal in California for the sperm from a man living with HIV to be used for insemination, which is not scientifically valid and frankly discriminatory. And so Dr. Deb Cohan who's the medical director of HIVE, led the effort to change that in this legislation. Poppy went and testified there. Some fertility clinics began offering it, and then it was too costly for her. And so then she began to say, well, can't I use PEP, which is post-exposure prophylaxis? No one really wanted to talk about that with her, but the pre-exposure prophylaxis trials were, starting to come out with little bits of information that maybe they'd be successful, and so she was offered PrEP. Then no one would write her the prescription or give. So it was this long, long journey till ultimately she has a child now with her partner. Her child's 3. She's negative. The baby's negative, and she's become this incredible champion and friend to women really around the country who are in similar situations. And that's one of
your favorites.
Yeah, I really learned from her that this is what love looks like. I mean, she's so committed to her dream of having a baby with her partner and so committed to him and his health. It was really a gift to go on the journey with her.
Right. A friend of mine, actually my mentor, Anthony Turney, when he was executive director of the NAMES Project, AIDS Memorial Quilt, said that his job was to put us out of business, i.e. that the quilt was a way to educate about AIDS, so one day there was no AIDS.
Absolutely.
How long before you can put HIVE out of business there is no HIV?
That's a really good question. I would love to see a mathematical model around that, but that's one of the reasons we rebranded, is to get away from the word AIDS and to just the perinatal piece solely because we're doing a lot of work around primary HIV prevention for women, reproductive health rights for men living with HIV. So I guess you know, I'm just pulling this off the top of my head. If you want to go at what San Francisco's going for, San Francisco, we believe that we can reduce HIV infections and HIV-related deaths by 90% by the year 2020.
Right.
And so ultimately, if we're able to have people living with HIV know their status and on HIV medications, they will not transmit HIV, and people who need it to be on PrEP, it's quite conceivable that you can get to zero.
Right. Last question. We have a new incoming president, new incoming administration. What would you like to say to President Trump or to his incoming Director of Health and Human Services as the Director of HIVE? Or you can, as Shannon Weber, I don't care which, or both.
Yeah, so what I would like to say is that intersectionality and bringing people's stories to the table matters. You know, I think for them to be wildly successful, which I think they want to be, they need to scoop in a wide net. They need to bring people on their cabinet and put in high positions people from a variety of backgrounds and be willing to listen to people's stories so that they can really move a just agenda forward.
Are you hopeful?
I do. That's hard. I want to be hopeful. I think it's possible, but it's looking, it's not looking great at this moment as we sit, but let's see, there's time.
Great, thanks so much. We've been speaking with Shannon Weber, Director of HIVE. Next up, our conversation with Paul Henderson, talking about the impact of the Trump election on communities of color, and specifically queer communities of color. We'll be right back.